The final insult. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the center of the Galactic Senate's Grand Chamber, watching as holographic displays showed the final vote count. The massive dome stretched above her like a crystalline sky, filled with floating platforms that held representatives from 47 different species. Each platform was designed for the unique needs of its occupants. Some floated in pools of liquid methane, others clung to heated crystal formations, and a few existed as pure energy contained within force fields. The Human Colony Defense Initiative had just been defeated by a vote of 43-4. Only the peaceful Melodian traders, the aquatic Deepwell Collective, and the insectoid hive minds had supported humanity's modest request for basic defensive rights on frontier worlds. Sarah had spent 3 years crafting this proposal, working with legal experts from a dozen species to ensure it violated no existing treaties or customs. The proposal was simple. Human colonists on disputed border worlds should have the right to defend themselves from raiders and hostile forces. They should be allowed to maintain small defensive fleets and establish planetary shield systems. Most importantly, they should not be forcibly relocated when more powerful species decided they wanted those worlds for themselves. Any reasonable civilization would consider these basic rights. Senator Vorthak of the mighty Hegemony Alliance rose from his floating throne, his massive reptilian form casting shadows across the chamber floor. When he spoke, his voice boomed through the translation systems with the authority of someone who had never been challenged. "The humans ask for too much too quickly," he declared, his words carrying the weight of ancient tradition. "They have been part of our galactic community for merely 27 years. Other species waited centuries before making such presumptuous demands." The crystalline representative from the Silicon Confederacy chimed in with sounds like breaking glass. Through the universal translator, her message was clear and cold. Humans reproduce at an alarming rate and consume resources inefficiently. They should focus on controlling their population growth before seeking additional territories. Their expansion threatens the delicate balance we have maintained for millennia. Sarah felt her jaw tighten as she listened to the familiar arguments. For nearly 3 decades, these had been the standard responses to any human request. Too young, too aggressive, too numerous, too demanding. It never mattered how reasonable their proposals were or how carefully they followed established protocols. The answer was always the same. The ethereal collective's representative floated in his containment field, his ghostly form shifting like smoke in a gentle breeze. His voice echoed with the wisdom of ages when he spoke. "Humans serve an important function as laborers and soldiers in our galactic economy. However, they lack the cultural sophistication and emotional maturity required for true leadership responsibilities. It would be better for all concerned if they accepted guidance from older, more experienced civilizations." One by one, the votes had come in, displayed on the massive screens that ringed the chamber. Each rejection felt like a physical blow to the human delegation seated in the observer galleries above. Dr. Michael Torres, Earth's chief scientific advisor, had helped write every word of the proposal. Professor Anna Kowalski from the Colonial Relations Institute had spent months researching legal precedents. General Robert Hayes had provided military expertise to ensure the defensive measures were reasonable and proportionate. All their work had been dismissed with barely a moment's consideration. Chairman Zelfar of the Prime Directorate floated at the center of the chamber, his ancient form barely visible within its life support system. As the oldest member of the Galactic Senate, his word carried absolute authority. His announcement of the vote's failure was delivered with the casual indifference of someone discussing the weather. Furthermore, he continued, his tone suggesting he was granting a great favor, due to the administrative burden that human requests continue to place on Senate resources, the Earth Federation's membership dues will increase by 250%, effective at the start of the next fiscal cycle. The human delegation gasped in shock. A 250% increase would bankrupt most of the outer colonies. Many frontier settlements survived on minimal budgets, sending every spare credit back to Earth to support the growing population there. Zelthar was not finished with his announcements. All human vessels using established galactic trade routes must now obtain individual transit permits from each system government along their planned routes. These permits may be revoked or modified at any time, for any reason deemed appropriate by local authorities. The processing fee for each permit will be set at market rates by the issuing government. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face as the implications became clear. The galactic trade routes were the lifelines of interstellar commerce. Without guaranteed access, human merchants would be at the mercy of every petty bureaucrat and local official between Earth and the frontier. Colonies that depended on regular shipments of food, medicine, and manufactured goods would be strangled by red tape and arbitrary fees. Around the chamber, alien representatives began expressing their amusement in ways unique to their species. The Vorthek delegation made deep rumbling sounds that Sarah had learned indicated satisfaction. The crystalline beings created harmonious chimes that somehow managed to sound condescending. Even the normally silent energy beings flickered in patterns that the translation system identified as laughter. The Aquatic Federation's representative rippled with what Sarah recognized as their version of mirth. Perhaps this experience will teach the humans the value of patience and humility, came the translation. They are like adolescents playing at being adults. This lesson will help them understand their proper place in the galactic order. A delegate from the Machine Collective added his electronic voice to the chorus of mockery. Humans excel at following orders and performing manual labor. They should focus on these strengths rather than aspiring to roles for which they are clearly unsuited. Their emotional nature makes them unreliable partners in complex negotiations. Sarah Chen had served as Earth's primary ambassador to the Galactic Senate for 8 years. She had negotiated trade agreements that brought prosperity to dozens of human worlds. She had resolved territorial disputes that could have led to wars. She had built personal relationships with representatives from species across the galaxy, learning their customs and earning their respect through patience and careful diplomacy. But as she stood in that chamber, listening to the laughter echoing from every corner, something fundamental changed inside her. These beings had never seen humans as equals. They never would. To them, humanity was a useful servant species at best, an annoying pest at worst. No amount of patience, diplomacy, or good faith effort would ever change their minds. Sarah walked slowly toward the central speaking platform, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. Gradually, the laughter died down as delegates realized the human ambassador intended to respond. Some leaned forward with curiosity, others looked bored, as if a trained animal was about to perform an amusing trick. When Sarah spoke, her voice was quiet but crystal clear. Every translation system in the chamber picked up her words and broadcast them in 47 different languages simultaneously. The United Earth Federation hereby formally withdraws from the Galactic Senate, effective immediately. The silence that followed was profound and complete. Even the constant background hum of the station's life support systems seemed to pause in surprise. Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger and more confident with each word. We came here seeking partnership and mutual respect. We offered our knowledge, our resources, our friendship, and our loyalty to this galactic community. In return, you have shown us exactly what you think of humanity and our contributions. Several delegates started to speak at once, but Sarah raised her hand and somehow they fell silent, perhaps sensing that something significant was happening. We thank you for this valuable lesson. You have taught us exactly where we stand in your hierarchy of species. You have shown us that no amount of patience, diplomacy, or good faith effort will ever earn us the respect we seek. She turned to face Chairman Zelfar directly. We will not continue to beg for scraps from your table. Humanity is withdrawing from this organization completely. We will make our own way in the universe. Sarah gathered her papers with deliberate care, while Dr. Torres and the rest of the human delegation stood and began moving toward the exits. Their footsteps echoed in the stunned silence as they filed out of the observer galleries. As they reached the main doors, Sarah heard Zelfar speaking to another delegate in what he clearly thought was a private communication channel. But Sarah's translator was still connected to the Senate's network, and every word came through clearly. "Let them go," Zelther said, his voice filled with dismissive amusement. "Humans are primarily useful for their raw materials and cheap labor anyway. They will return within 2 standard cycles, begging for readmission to our community. This tantrum will not last long. They cannot survive without our guidance and protection." The chamber erupted in laughter again, louder and more sustained than before. Delegates buzzed and chirped and sang their amusement at humanity's dramatic exit. None of them paid attention to the small, cold smile that crossed Sarah Chen's face as she walked through the doors of the Galactic Senate for the last time. Behind her, the most powerful beings in the galaxy continued laughing at what they believed was humanity's greatest mistake. They had no idea they had just made the biggest error in galactic history: the Silent Revolution. 6 months after humanity's dramatic exit from the Galactic Senate, Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching his tactical display with quiet satisfaction. The ship hung in space at the edge of the Kepler system, completely invisible to the Vorthek patrol fleet passing less than 1,000 kilometers away. The alien warships were massive, bristling with weapons that had intimidated species across the galaxy for generations. Their sensors swept space continuously, searching for any sign of the human vessels that had been reported in the area. But the Vorthek scanners found nothing except empty space and distant stars. Admiral Webb smiled as he watched the enemy fleet change course for the 3rd time in an hour, chasing sensor ghosts and phantom readings. The adaptive stealth systems that Dr. Elena Vasquez had developed made human ships completely undetectable by conventional sensors. More importantly, the technology was based on principles that most galactic species had dismissed as impossible. "Sir," reported Captain Lisa Park from her position at the communications console, "we have confirmation from all flotillas. Operation Silent Thunder is proceeding exactly on schedule. The Vorthek supply convoys have been successfully intercepted and their crews relocated to the sanctuary stations." Webb nodded with approval. Every aspect of the operation had been planned with meticulous care. The Vorthek merchant vessels had been disabled with electromagnetic pulse weapons that left their hulls intact but knocked out all systems. The crews had been safely transported to hidden space stations, where they were being held in comfortable facilities with full life support, recreational activities, and excellent food. No one had been harmed. That was critically important to the overall strategy. "Any casualties among the prisoners?" Webb asked, though he already knew the answer. "0 casualties, sir," Park replied with evident pride. "The boarding teams used sleep gas and neural dampeners exactly as planned. Every alien crew member is alive, unharmed, and actually seems to be enjoying the accommodations. Several of them have asked if they can extend their stay." Webb chuckled at that. The sanctuary stations had been designed by human psychologists who understood the needs of different species. The facilities were actually more comfortable than most military vessels, with better food, entertainment, and living spaces than the alien crews were accustomed to. It was another carefully crafted message. "We could have hurt you, but we chose not to." The real shockwave had begun 3 days earlier when the first Vorthek supply convoy simply vanished between star systems. No distress signals, no debris fields, no explanation for what had happened to 6 heavily armed transport ships and their escort vessels. The disappearance had been treated as an isolated incident, possibly the work of pirates or raiders. But then more convoys had vanished. Crystalline Confederacy mining ships disappeared while traveling through supposedly secure space. Ethereal collective research vessels vanished without a trace. Within a week, 17 separate incidents had been reported across 8 different star systems. The pattern was always identical. Ships would be traveling normally, maintaining regular communication with their home bases, when they would suddenly disappear from all sensors and tracking systems. Search and rescue teams found no wreckage, no survivors, and no clues about what had happened to the missing vessels. Meanwhile, something even more remarkable was happening in human space. The colonies that the Galactic Senate had expected to wither and collapse without alien support were not just surviving but thriving. New settlements were being established on worlds that other species had declared uninhabitable. Human cargo ships were traveling routes through dangerous regions that Council species avoided entirely. Dr. Elena Vasquez had become the most celebrated scientist in human space, though her name was unknown to the galactic community. Her breakthroughs in quantum engineering had revolutionized human technology almost overnight. The adaptive stealth systems were just the beginning. She had also developed faster-than-light communication networks that operated independently of galactic infrastructure and manufacturing techniques that could produce complex equipment from raw materials found on virtually any planet. The transformation had not happened by accident. For years before humanity's withdrawal from the Senate, a secret consortium of human scientists, engineers, and military strategists had been preparing for exactly this scenario. They had studied galactic technology, identified its weaknesses, and developed alternatives that were not just equivalent but superior. The aliens had made a critical mistake in their assessment of human capabilities. They had seen humanity's willingness to work within existing systems as evidence of technological inferiority. They had interpreted human patience and diplomacy as signs of weakness and dependence. They had completely failed to understand that humans were natural innovators who thrived when challenged. Captain Park interrupted Webb's thoughts with another report. "Sir, we are receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Thompson is requesting an immediate conference with all flotilla commanders." "Put her through," Webb ordered. The main display showed Admiral Carol Thompson in the command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Behind her, dozens of officers worked at control stations that monitored human operations across the galaxy. The facility had been built in absolute secrecy over the past 5 years, hidden from alien observation satellites and sensors. "Marcus," Thompson said without preamble, "we have received contact from the Zephyrian Collective. They want to discuss a formal alliance with the Earth Federation." Webb raised an eyebrow in surprise. The Zephyrians were one of the more reasonable species in galactic politics, known for their scientific achievements and peaceful nature. They had abstained from voting on most anti-human proposals in the Senate, though they had never actively supported human interests either. "What are they offering?" he asked. "Full technology exchange," Thompson replied. "They want access to our stealth systems and quantum manufacturing techniques. In return, they are offering us their gravity manipulation technology and access to their trade networks throughout the galactic core." It was an attractive proposal. Zephyrian gravity technology could revolutionize human space travel and planetary engineering. Their trade networks would give humanity access to markets and resources that had been closed off since the Senate withdrawal. But Webb sensed there was more to the story. "What is their real motivation, Admiral?" "The Zephyrians do not make impulsive decisions." Thompson smiled grimly. "Their economy is collapsing, Marcus. Without the trade routes that we have been disrupting, they cannot get the rare materials they need for their manufacturing base. 3 of their major industrial worlds have shut down production entirely. They need our help more than they want to admit." The same pattern was repeating across the galaxy. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive and dependent were discovering that they had become reliant on human labor, human-operated trade routes, and human-mediated commerce. The galactic economy was not as stable as it appeared on the surface. "How many other species have made contact?" Webb asked. 12 so far," Thompson replied. "The Melodian traders want to establish exclusive partnerships with human merchants. The Deepwell Collective is offering us underwater mining rights on 47 worlds. Even some of the smaller hegemony worlds are reaching out through back channels." Webb nodded thoughtfully. The strategy was working exactly as planned. By withdrawing from the galactic community, humanity had revealed how interconnected and interdependent the galaxy had become. The aliens had not realized how much they depended on human participation in their economy and society. "What about the major powers?" he asked. "Any word from the Vorthak hegemony or the Prime Directorate?" Thompson's expression grew more serious. The Vorthak are mobilizing their battle fleets, she said. Intelligence reports suggest they are planning some kind of military response to our operations. Chairman Zelthar has been making speeches about the need to discipline rebellious species and maintain galactic order. Webb was not surprised. The Vorthak had built their power on intimidation and the threat of force. They would not easily accept that a species they considered inferior had outmaneuvered them so completely. "Are we ready for a direct confrontation?" he asked. "More ready than they could possibly imagine," Thompson replied with confidence. "Dr. Vasquez has some new surprises that she is eager to field test, and we have been receiving intelligence data from some very unexpected sources." Before Webb could ask what she meant, Captain Park interrupted with an urgent report. "Sir, we have multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. Configuration matches Zephyrian collective vessels, but they are broadcasting human diplomatic codes." Webb turned his attention back to Thompson. "Admiral, it looks like our new friends have arrived for their meeting." "Excellent," Thompson replied. "Give them a demonstration of our hospitality, Marcus. But keep the weapons systems ready. We are entering a new phase of this operation, and things are about to become much more interesting." As the Zephyrian ships approached under human escort, Webb reflected on how much had changed in just 6 months. A galaxy that had dismissed humanity as primitive and dependent was learning a harsh lesson about assumptions and underestimation. The real revolution was just beginning.